William Darrell Patterson and Margaret M. Patterson were a married couple that lived in El Paso, Texas. It's unknown when Margaret was born, though it's assumed that she was born around 1915. According to the Doe Network, William, also known as Pat, was born on July 23, 1904. William is described as having been white, 5'11", 200 pounds, with gray hair. He dressed well, wore expensive jewelry, and was known among his friends for wanting the best in life. Margaret was 5'4", 110 pounds, with red hair and had a petite build. Margaret's maiden name was Kiefer, and she was nicknamed Tilly as a child. Allegedly, she had grown up in Owensboro, Kentucky. Margaret was 42 and William 52 at the time of their disappearance. Allegedly, the Pattersons moved to El Paso in 1940 from Dallas. They built up their business, and during the war, William sold nylon stockings that he smuggled from Mexico on the black market. The couple lived on the 3000 block of Piedmont Drive, or Avenue, or Street, depending on the source, in El Paso. On the night of March 5th, or even the early morning of the 6th, the two left their home, any indication that they'd be gone for more than a few hours. When the house was examined, it was found in disarray, with the dishes unwashed, underwear and a pair of Margaret's stockings on a bed, and other indications that the Pattersons did not know they were going to be leaving for a long time. The couple had an orange tabby named Tommy that they left behind. Tommy was considered to have been Margaret's most precious possession, with neighbors saying that they fed him caviar. Their items were left behind at the house, and there wasn't a sign of a struggle. People that knew the Pattersons told authorities in the 50s that the couple left to go on an extended vacation to Florida, and later weren't going to be coming back. A friend of the couple reported them missing 5 months later on August 15, 1957. A neighbor said that she was at their house the night they disappeared, offering Girl Scout cookies, and that Mrs. Patterson seemed very upset that the neighbor was there. They also noted unusual activity from the Pattersons later that night. The neighbor stated that this was the first time that they had tried to talk to the Pattersons, since they tended to keep to themselves. William was described as always coming across as mean and unfriendly. The Pattersons left without disconnecting their utilities, telling the post office whether to stop or forward their mail, and without stopping their newspaper delivery or storing their fur coats or even boarding their cat Tommy. El Paso authorities convened an inquest to look for the whereabouts of the couple, but failed to find them. Allegedly, before the couple disappeared, they had dinner one night with a friend named Cecil Ward and his wife. After eating, William and Cecil went to the garage to apply a coat of acrylic to the wooden boat that William was building. Apparently, William mentioned nothing about a trip, and they had even talked about plans for later that week. Cecil stated, "He talked about what we would do on the boat the other nights during the week, and about plans for fishing and doing a lot of other things in the spring and summer." Cecil's wife stated that Margaret never mentioned anything at all about plans for a trip. Cecil Ward owned a business as a mechanic. On the morning of March 6, 1957, Ward was surprised that the Pattersons' Cadillac was still in the driveway. Doyle Kirkland, rival business owner to William, but friend, went into Cecil Ward's shop and asked him to service the car. There's apparently a broken horn ring on the steering wheel. That same week, Cecil Ward wanted his electric sander back, which William had used. Ward called William's store, though he didn't talk to him directly. And the sander was returned to Cecil, but it was brought over by Doyle Kirkland. The Pattersons owned the Patterson Photo Supply near downtown El Paso. They also owned an interest in a high-end boat company, property in Guaymas, Mexico, a boat, and a Cadillac on top of their house. Associates told the police that William wrote instructions and sent them on how he wanted to dispose of his business and private properties. On March 15th of that year, their accountant, Herbert Roth, got a telegram with instructions on how to manage the couple's assets. The telegram was called into a Western Union office in Dallas from a payphone near the Love Field Airport. The telegram was signed W.H. Patterson, despite William's initials being W.D. Patterson. An officer has stated that it is very possible, though, that the employee who took the message may have messed up and put the H. Herbert Roth was also told to cancel the hotel reservations that the couple made in Washington, D.C. They were originally going to attend a National Photographers Association that spring. Herbert Roth was also told to rent out the Patterson home for 9 months, to sell a mobile home that they owned, and use the proceeds to support the store, and to have Doyle Kirkland manage the store. There wasn't any evidence that the couple did or did not go to the photography convention. Doyle Kirkland owned the rival business of Duffy Photo Service, also of El Paso. He was William's friend and the last person to see them alive at their house before they vanished. Kirkland was helping William work on his boat in the garage. Allegedly, the note stated, or the letter, as there was a letter sent on May 29, 1957 from Laredo, Texas, to distribute his properties and assets to his business auditor and a 24-year-old employee, Arthur Moreno. Moreno was to be given their home and furniture. Doyle Kirkland got the vacation cabinet, tools and boats, and William's Cadillac. It's considered unusual for William to have left his businesses with other people because he still had living family, such as his father and sister. As far as I know, the couple never had kids, and nothing ever mentions if they ever even wanted any. William is known to have been having an affair at the time before his disappearance. William was seen in Juarez, Mexico, with 20-year-old Estefana Arroyo Marfin. He got into an argument at a bar or nightclub because Estefana wasn't being served, which she worked at the place, by the way. But eventually the argument was de-escalated. When the couple vanished, Estefana Marfin stated that before William disappeared, he told her that, "When they come for me, I'll have to go in a hurry." But she later recanted this statement. There are several sightings of the couple in Mexico, but the sheriffs were unable to confirm these. For example, in 1959, Sheriff Bob Bailey traveled to Valle de Bravo to check on a report of a sighting of the couple, but came back empty-handed. Allegedly, a sheriff also went to Mexico City to look for them, where at a hotel, workers identified the couple, saying that they stayed for 7 months in 1957. There is no evidence of the Pattersons having signed into any sort of guest book, though. Business associates of the Pattersons told authorities that the couple left for an extended vacation to Florida, and then later sent word that they wouldn't be returning. Months after they disappeared, the Pattersons' cat Tommy was found at the home, malnourished and filthy, after having wandered away for 4 months. In June of 1957, a friend of William's said that he had lied to friends, stating that he'd been in touch with William. He said that William had asked him at one point that if he were to ever disappear, to make it sound like he was all right and would return soon. Doyle Kirkland claimed that he'd been awakened in the middle of the night of March 5th or 6th by a call from someone claiming to be William. The person stated that he and Margaret were going away for a while, and Kirkland stated that he had been so sleepy he couldn't confirm if it was really William's voice or not. The Pattersons' lawyer testified to the letter that he also got. The Pattersons were very secret about their previous life. Many people did not even know Margaret's birthday, and many couldn't ever get much out of the couple's background. No one knew how they met or even when they were married. Allegedly, Margaret had 6 siblings that all lived in the Midwest, who were later located after her disappearance. Margaret had left home at an early age and worked as a hostess at one point in the Hotel Vendome in Evansville, Indiana. Her family disapproved of William and made her make a choice to choose either them or him, and she chose William. In 1957, they hadn't heard from Margaret in over 20 years and assumed that she was dead. As far as I know from articles, at the time of the disappearance, William's only family was his father and a sister that never seemed to have been interviewed. William's father, Luther Patterson, stated that William made his living doing sleight of hand tricks and had taken off before. After several years passed without hearing from his son, though, he changed his mind and stated that he thought William was dead. In 1984, the case was reopened when a man named Ronaldo Nangare came to authorities telling them what he saw. An illegal immigrant at the time, he was hired to clean the house after the couple vanished. He stated that he saw blood under and around the water heater in the garage, and a piece of human scalp on the propeller of Patterson's boat. He found a pair of jeans with a Rolex watch that belonged to William, and he said that he saw one of Patterson's associates remove bloody sheets from the home and put them inside the trunk of a car. The reason he did not come to police sooner was because he was undocumented, though when he did come to law enforcement, he was a U.S. citizen. 2 years after coming forth to law enforcement, he died in a car accident. In 1989, the sheriff's office took a statement from a woman in Colorado that knew the Pattersons several years before they went missing, but it did not advance the investigation. William and Margaret were legally declared dead in 1964. After their disappearance, the house that they lived in was rumored to be haunted. The case is still considered open to this day, and there do not seem to be any memorials for them since. Allegedly, Doyle Kirkland left El Paso in the 60s, and police never heard of him since. There's quite a few theories as to what happened to the couple when they disappeared. The first is that William killed Margaret and ran. The second is that Margaret killed William and ran. Third is that the couple were murdered by any of the people that inherited their stuff. 4. The couple were government spies from a foreign country that fled to Mexico or anywhere else. The couple were kidnapped, or they just left to start a new life, or they were abducted by aliens. And I'll start with the smallest points first. The first point being alien abduction. There's nothing out there that really seems to suggest this. I've only read articles that mention this passingly, but considering the mid-century association with sci-fi weirdness, I can see where this proposal came from. To me, this is just about as strong a contention as Jim Sullivan being abducted by aliens. There's nothing to really prove it or even disprove it. Maybe William was an alien, left to start a new life. There's a contention that seems to have more strength to it, though there seems to be one problem. If they started a new life, wouldn't there have been proof of the couple having used their social security numbers for years after leaving El Paso? Granted, this doesn't mean that they didn't start a new life in a whole other country, which is possible. I haven't read anything, though, saying whether or not their social security numbers were ever proven to be used or unused after disappearing. This could still be a possibility even if it were one person leaving the other behind after a murder, since back then, people could rather easily leave their money in various offshore accounts. If anything, though, I feel like them being legally declared dead in 1964 probably proves that their social security numbers weren't used since they disappeared. Next is that they were kidnapped. This seems plausible, though at the same time it feels too far-fetched. If we were to completely ignore the information from 1984 about the blood, it just seems weird that they'd be kidnapped without any sort of ransom note sent to the media about getting something for taking the couple. Next is that they were murdered. There are people that think that both William and Margaret were murdered, more than likely by any of the people that inherited the stuff from them. Now, in conjunction with a kidnapping, this seems plausible. It's odd that a non-family member would inherit items from the Pattersons, but at the same time, too, Margaret's family cut off all ties with her, and they thought she was dead. They hadn't heard from her in 20 years, so in 1957, the last they heard from her was 1937. The couple didn't have any offspring, and it didn't even seem like William was close to his own family. But even still, I personally doubt about the possibility that they were both murdered for their stuff, because when you think of all the letters and telegrams that William supposedly sent to his lawyer, it seems just much too elaborate of a ruse that would require someone traveling all the way from Dallas to El Paso to Laredo just to send a letter. That's hours of traveling just to throw someone off. Of course, at the same time too, with this being the mid-century, Perhaps maybe somebody could just say that they were in a different location. But at the same time, too, the Western Union telegram was proven to have been called in from a payphone in the Dallas Love Field Airport. The next contention is that one spouse killed another. Personally, I do think that this is a very big possibility. When I first read about this case, I thought that it sounded a lot like Margaret was in an abusive relationship. Her being cut off from her family for decades, her alcohol abuse, William seeming like a cold man, then having an affair on her. I was pretty convinced that it could have gone either way. Maybe Margaret had had enough of her cheating husband and did him in. Or perhaps William killed Margaret and gave away all of his things so other people would get their fingerprints on his old stuff. Perhaps he wanted to run away to Mexico and start a life with Estefana. Thinking about how there was a scalp on the boat and blood on some sheets that were hidden in someone's car, someone must have gotten murdered somewhere. There's the belief that if they were killed in any way possible, they could have also been buried around the mountains behind their house. I looked for unidentified peoples in the El Paso area, and there weren't any cases even remotely close to the Pattersons. In fact, the earliest unidentified body, on Nameless at least, was from about the early 90s, I think 1993. Some people believed that the couple never left at all, and that their bodies were buried on or around the plot of the house. But there hasn't been any evidence of this either. There's the idea, though, that there's a John Doe from Colton, California that may have been William. He was found on June 18, 1964, and was estimated to have died about 2 weeks before being found. He was a white male, about 5'6" to 5'8", 140 to 160 pounds, and gray, balding hair. He was edentulous, except for one lower molar. And the Doe had a gray plaid shirt, 2 pairs of gray or green pants, brown lace boots, blue socks, a gray cap, and a tan jacket. He had a Hamilton Watch Company watch case and a leather key case that had the initials WDP. As of January 2021, there are no exclusions to his case. Though I do want to point out that I find that this is probably unlikely because it still doesn't answer what happened to Margaret, and then on top of that, how could William Patterson gone from essentially a rich man to a homeless, toothless, bald guy? It doesn't really make that much sense to me. My last contention for this is that they were spies. Now, I know that this sounds like a very crackpot theory, but I actually believe this one the most. And this is my opinion, and you don't have to believe me. But initially, I thought that, of course, maybe one of the spouses killed the other. But the more I looked for public information on the couple, the more confused I became. If you remember, the couple were very private about their past and usually kept to themselves. Not much is known about their early lives, despite William coming from Illinois, Margaret from Kentucky, and that they had hard childhoods. When I tried to search for any sort of census records for either person, I found absolutely nothing. Now, we don't know Margaret's birthday, but it's believed that she was born around 1915. William's alleged birth is listed above, which I also doubt the veracity of. He would have been born about 1904 or 1905. I looked for any sort of information about William being on any census record that would have been from 1910 to 1940, and there was nothing. I searched the name for Margaret, and there was never a single result. I even searched for Margaret by her maiden name in the alleged home state of Kentucky, and I still never found any record of her. There's no record of their marriage, no record of birth, or anything. I'm extremely suspicious of Margaret even having siblings, since there's no other source for this information than the Charlie Project, and there's not even a source on that for a link. Even further, William's father is listed as Luther Patterson, who was 75 at the time of William's disappearance. Simple math tells us that this man would have been born around 1882, give or take a year, for a late birthday. Articles state that William came from Chicago, and yet when I look up any census record for Luther in Illinois, there was no such person. There was not even a record showing the birth of William, if he had even been born in Illinois to begin with. I looked for any sort of memorial for Luther Patterson on Find a Grave, and there's not anything that fits the area or time period that he would have came from either. And let's not forget that William supposedly had a sister, and yet we never heard a word about her. On top of that, William's own family did not report him missing, a neighbor did. Now, in articles, it states that several years later, from 1957, that William's father changed his mind and said that he believed that William was dead. And so 7 years plus 75 would be about 82. And so if William's father was still alive in 1964, there's still nothing proving that Luther Patterson died after William Patterson went missing. And while it seems far-fetched, even Sheriff Leo Salmonengo believes in this theory. He's quoted as saying, "The way they got up and just walked away and left everything behind. The Russians or whoever sent them probably told them to drop everything and go back. Some people said that they had seen Patterson take photographs of Fort Bliss and military shipments on trains that came here. Though I admit, FBI Special Agent Art Werg stated that he didn't find any info in the agency's files that go back that far, indicating whether the Pattersons ever came under surveillance for suspected espionage. I don't think that the spy theory, though, is too far off, because when you consider the time period this was in, just 4 years prior, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were executed by the United States after being convicted of conspiracy to commit espionage with the USSR. World War II was not that long ago, and it was the Cold War era. In fact, this was just the end of what would have been considered the Red Scare, which in itself was from 1947 to 1957. What really drives the idea for me is that, despite William working as a carny in Chicago, he somehow had the money to own a business and have luxurious items in his home. Allegedly, Tommy the cat ate caviar, they owned fur coats, and they even had a Cadillac. What I want to know is, where did William Patterson get his money? After the Pattersons disappeared, the city of El Paso had many rumors of the old house being haunted. There are rumors that both, or at least the ghost of Margaret, haunted their home. Sheriff Salmonengo stated, "When I was a city patrolman, the house on Piedmont was in my district. I would get 100 calls. All these kids would stop by the house because they thought the house was haunted, and they would scare this poor lady who lived there. There are stories from people online claiming to have lived in the house back when it was rented out. Not all knew the history behind the house, but all stories came back to the same line, that it was creepy. Interestingly enough, when rented out, the items left behind by the Pattersons were still in the house when various families lived in it, clothes and all." On the Kiss FM website, there's audio of an investigation that Henry Flores performed years ago, and the audio seems to capture a woman's cry implied to be a female ghost. What I find most interesting about the whole ghost and haunted house theory is that technically that implies that Margaret's the one that died. And if you think about the whole one spouse potentially killed the other, well, no one ever says anything about a male ghost. People always talk about a scary female ghost looking at them from across the room. In conclusion, though, unfortunately, I don't think that this case is ever going to be solved. I think that it's too old and way too vague. I find it curious that the house was left to be leased with literally all of their things left in it. I wonder if or why police didn't seem to go through their items for clues. And where did they even get their pictures of the couple? There are so many points here that don't make any sense. Sometimes it feels like they could have been spies, or other times they could have been murdered by Doyle Kirkland. I don't think that this is a case where we will ever know the truth.